Since the beginning of the Anglophone crisis in 2016, the word dialogue has been in the lips of Cameroonians of goodwill. Both parties have joined the bandwagon of singing for dialogue, at the same time accusing each other of not wanting to dialogue. The Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Cameroon, Head of State President Paul Biya, during his end-of-year speech at one point in time asked that if the government is to dialogue even with the separatists, who will they dialogue with the disunity that is within the camp? The same separatists also are pointing fingers at Cameroon's government, stating that they cannot dialogue with the government within Cameroon, that if dialogue must take place, it must take place within a neutral venue. Cameroonians are singing dialogue. As we speak, guns are smoking in the bushes. People are dying every day, with those who are being killed by natural causes, affected because they are not in their residence in which they could have good medical care and they could live at the comfort of themselves. Yet they are being killed not by bullets but by diseases. Others who are striving in other regions have left their homes as internally displaced persons with the hope that one day they will return to their place of residence. The song of dialogue is still being echoed. On the 30th of September 2019, Cameroon's government organized a grand major national dialogue, during which they dashed out invitations to some separatist leaders alongside prominent opposition leaders, civil society activists, and men of God, in order to look into the situation of the Anglophone crisis and to propose meaningful solution that will resolve the conflict. It was chaired by Cameroon's Prime Minister, Chief Dr. Joseph Jangute, under the firm instruction of President Paul Biya, in which members converged in Yaoundé for 3 days to propose solutions. After the Grand Major National Dialogue, lots of proposals were made, channeled to President Paul Biya. As we speak right now, some have been implemented, others are still in a snail process in which it will take the coming of Christ to see whether those processes will be facilitated. As we all speak, the U.S. government last week echoed that sanction will be given, visa restriction to be more precise, will be given to those who are making it difficult for the Anglophone crisis to come to an end, those who are promoting violence in the Anglophone region. But what will the U.S. do as far as the conflict is concerned? What will other parties do as far as the conflict is concerned in order to avenge or order to solve the problem plaguing the Northwest and Southwest region? Who has the legality to end this conflict? Is it the government of Cameroon? Is it the United Nations organization or the separatists? This is House of Commons. With me, Tah Mai Javis. (2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. Good afternoon to all those of you who are watching us in Boya, those of you who are watching us in Bamenda, those of you who are watching us in Yaoundé, and those of you who are watching us online. Want to say good afternoon and happy Sunday to you. To kickstart today's program, which is who has the legal responsibility in ending the war in the Northwest and Southwest region, I begin by introducing to you my guest. I start with Mr. Ngalim, who is a human rights advocate. Mr. Ngalim, it is a privilege to have you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Javis. It's a privilege to share the panel with you and with the rest of the guests. I hope we have a very fruitful and educational conversation today.
Thank you very much. We await the arrival of Barrister Tamfu, who notified me that he will be here, and also Barrister Nkea, who is yet to join us on this edition of our program. Here in the studio we have Sir Mutagha Sylvanus. You're welcome to the Sylvanus. You're welcome to the program. A privilege to have you.
It's quite a privilege to be on this prestigious platform. Permit me use this opportunity to greet my co-panelists, especially Mr. Ngalim and Kedia, with whom we are sharing this platform maybe for the second or third time. Let me also use this opportunity to greet all the militants of the Cameroon Renaissance movement who are watching us right in the diaspora and at home here in Cameroon. And to start with a special greeting to Christians, because the Bible says there is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof leads to eternal damnation. Thanks a lot. I think today's topic is one of those very brain-wrecking topics that will need a lot of digging several layers deep to come out with exactly what will be as a kind of pedagogic lesson and also a way of looking for solution to the war that has been plaguing the two English-speaking regions of Cameroon for over 5 years today.
Thank you. Here we have Kedia Malangfe, who is a member of Cameroon's People Democratic Movement, CPDM. Kedia Malangfe, it is a privilege to have you. A happy Sunday to you.
Thank you very much. Greeting to my co-panelists, and I'd like to take this opportunity to greet all Cameroonians, especially our Member of Parliament that are going on with their June session at the Assembly, especially Honorable Ngalim Bernard and Honorable Njingu Musa, that are really on the field doing a good work for the good health of their people in this period of COVID, and to promote education in their various constituencies.
Thank you very much. These are the gentlemen with whom we are going to discuss on today's program. We shall also be having intervention from Mr. Sama Abang, and also we shall have intervention from Jan Dennis, the PAP, the president of the People's PAP movement. I'll begin with you, Mr. Ngalim. Mr. Ngalim, when we look at the topic itself, who has the responsibility of ending the war in the northwest and southwest region? You are a legal mind, and you are also a human rights advocate. You have a knowledge as far as principle of war across the globe is concerned, and you are deeply rooted in terms of conflict. Who has that legality?
Thank you, Javis, for this very complicated and complex question, which calls for an in-depth reflection and analysis. You know, this should not be a question that is limited only to the law or to conflict management, but it's supposed to be handled as an holistic question, because, you know, life is a whole bucket where everybody contributes. And as we are talking about the war, we need to also look at the role that civil society can play, the role that the church or religion can play, and the role that medical doctors can play. Every person has a role to play. But if we have to narrow it down to the topic of the conversation today, which is the legal responsibility, the legal responsibility falls down on the parties who are engaged in this war. We have two principal parties. The first party is the state of Cameroon, represented by the government of Cameroon, and the other party is the Amazonian movement. So when we look at what is happening, we do acknowledge the fact that both sides are engaged in the conflict, and there is violations on both sides. Both sides are killing people, and both sides are destroying property. So it would be a little bit disingenuous to say that that one side is innocent, but we can look at what responsibilities each side has to contribute towards the resolution of the conflict. First of all, the government is enshrined or is obligated to protect citizens at all levels. You know, the government of Cameroon does not operate in an island. The government of Cameroon represents Cameroonians and also has obligations at the international level. But the separatists have an obligation at their own level to keep themselves away from criminal responsibility, though they have the arguments that they raise, and the government also has its arguments that it raises. The government argues largely that they are fighting to preserve the territorial integrity of the nation, which of course is one of government's responsibilities. But when you look further into international legal instruments and into national laws, you would find that the laws compel government to protect both citizens and their property before looking at territory. And if we have to compare territory to people, I would argue that people need to be protected more than territory. So over the last 5 or so years, we have come across a situation where people die every day, people are killed every day, and the situation is causing more deaths. And because the government has a responsibility to maintain peace and security over the national territory, the government has the yam and the knife to call the shots in this situation. You would remember that the government has always insisted that no inch of the territory has fallen into Amazonian hands, meaning government has the sovereignty and the authority over the whole territory. Therefore, any action that is happening within the territory, be it by Amazonians or be it by any other person, is supposed to be regulated by the government. The government has that sole responsibility to call the shots here. And when we talk about calling the shots to end a war, it's not necessarily military. I would really want the government to move away from the military thought, because leadership goes beyond the hammer. You can also use the carrot when you're using the stick method. So you can cajole, you can use other strategies. And I think dialogue and talking is one of the best ways to do this. Everybody has called for dialogue, everybody has called for negotiation, but government is not budging. So I think it's necessary that government recognizes that it has a full responsibility to end this war. It has the obligation to protect citizens' rights, and it has the duty to also engage in dialogue, because governance means talking, governance means listening, governance means executing consensual agreements. So the government has the responsibility, if we have to put it very simply, to end this war. Thank you, Javis.
Okay, we'll be coming back to you. Barrister Tamfu is here with us. He just joined us. He's sitting in as a legal mind. I want us to make that distinction, because when we sent out the flyer, people were saying that based on the constitution of the panelists, that it was not kind of balanced. Barrister Tamfu, we are looking at the legal responsibility in ending this conflict. You have been defending people in the northwest, southwest, and the entire Cameroon and beyond, as far as rights, respecting human rights is concerned. When we look at this war, lots of right violation is ongoing from both parties. So far, as a legal mind now, to stop you from moving up and down to defend this client, which takes a lot of headache, who has that responsibility in helping you to stay put in resolving this conflict once and for all?
Yes, thank you for having me. You have to pardon my lateness. It was due to circumstances beyond my control. Your question is very important. You are asking to know who has the legal responsibility to solve the crisis in the Northwest and Southwest. I will answer you simply. The Northwest and the Southwest are not isolated countries. They are regions in a country called Cameroon. Cameroon has a constitution. In that constitution, there is the office of the president, who is the head of state, head of the army. He's the guarantor of our liberties, civilian liberties, political liberties. So when you are asking me who has that legal responsibility, there are no two persons that has the power. That is the yam and the knife, and that person is the head of state, President Paul Biya at now. That is the sole person that can decide. If he himself was at the forefront of this crisis, we wouldn't have been living what we are living today. But it's because he has been delegating powers. That is why we are living what we have today. Because those he delegated power to at first did not even recognize that there was a problem. Whereas he who is like the guarantor of our liberties will have come out and said, I have that mandate to protect citizens in the Northwest and the Southwest. I have, when you say you have the mandate, people voted him to office. So he has that responsibility to make peace.
Constitutional responsibility.
That is it, and that is the legality. That nobody will question it. So we should not be beating left and right to ask who. Don't expect the parties who are on the field fighting to come up and meet. They are at war. Everybody wants to defend his own position. That is the situation. But now, he, like the president, would have come out and say, okay, I have that legal responsibility because I have a constitutional mandate. I have observed the ongoing conflict, and I've been able to identify how many parties or who are involved. That is not being done. So first, they are not able to identify the parties. And if you are not able to identify the parties, you will not be able to know how to even start. But that's acting in bad faith. Because I will say that if this conflict is ongoing, the only responsible person, who is that legal person you are talking about, is the head of state, Mr. Bia. He is the one who is instigating this continuous ongoing conflict because he has deliberately refused to settle it out. And I bet you the option he took, because to him, he took an option to resolve it, thinking that militarily he is going to succeed. But we have had other conflicts as it is happening in other countries, and we have seen that the military option that he decided, because when you even say who has that legal responsibility to put an end, we should not also forget that he's the one who is a principal person who instigated it, who made it to go to this armed war, because he is the one who declared war to the people.
Like many say, he did not declare war. Many say he did not declare war. That he was just responding to acts of violence.
If he has the legal responsibility, right? He has the legal responsibility. Okay, let's assume he did not declare war, but you have that legal responsibility now.
When you say
he has the legal responsibility now to put an end to the war, right?
Yes.
Good. Let him take the baton.
Barrister, when you say the head of state is instigating this conflict, the head of state will argue that he has called for the grand measure national dialogue. He has released prisoners. He has created the disarmament commission and demobilization. That he has called for those in the diaspora to shun violence and come back home like prodigal son. That he has given the special status. That he has created the bilingualism commission. That he is much is still going to be done, and that he recently appointed independent conciliators in these two regions.
He is still going the wrong way.
Okay.
You cannot have the legal responsibility to solve problems, and when you want to take decision, you don't consult those people. What he organized, let us be frank to ourselves, he himself knew that it cannot work. You don't know with who you are discussing, because I even thought that after arresting Ayok Siseko, he had even identified the parties. But as the major national dialogue was organized, it shows that he himself did not know with who he was talking. So that is why today we are living the consequences. Nothing has moved. All the commissions you are putting in place, the disarmament,
and
reconstruction, releasing prisoners, you have not yet released. You cannot arrest 2,000 people and you release 10, 20, 50, and you say you are solving the problem. You are wasting time. If he wants to solve the problem, and I will still say it, he has that legal responsibility to solve the problem. If we continue to sing it to him, so if he's not doing it, it is his responsibility. He has the mandate of Cameroon. I'm not the one who is. If I was the president, I would have solved it in the next 100 days.
Okay.
But he has the mandate. The responsibility is on him. If he doesn't resolve it, there is no. The question should not be beaten day and night. It is the head of state who has the legal responsibility.
Kedia Malangfe. The United States just released the State Department said they are going to institute visa restriction to those who are preventing or those who are promoting violence in the North and Southwest region, and urge the government of Cameroon to dialogue. Is that not a signal that the grand measure national dialogue failed by what the U.S. is considering that dialogue with the separatists, and the special status itself is still hanging in the balance, and many Cameroonians are of the opinion that the head of state is not doing enough in resolving this conflict? As you listen to what Barrister Tamfu said, and also what Mr. Ngalim said, that the government of Cameroon has that legality in resolving this conflict because the Northwest and Southwest region are within Cameroon.
Firstly, when we talk about dialogue, there is a conception that many people have that maybe after the Grand National Dialogue, Cameroonians will never sit together and dialogue. That's wrong. We met in Fumba and we had a dialogue in Fumba where we draft a constitution. In the early 1990s, we met and we decided on certain changes that took place, and the Grand National Dialogue took place. And just of recent, even the Prime Minister was dialoguing with businessmen based on reconstruction of Northwest and Southwest region. Dialogue has always been at the main forefront of the present crisis we have. We remember that when this crisis started, we saw ministers going to South Africa to dialogue with those that are there. Some were dispatched to Europe and America. That's it. They were the one in Europe that even said that the government representative should come back and dialogue with the people back at home. Maybe some of us have forgotten. The present Prime Minister now was in charge of Commonwealth. He was one of those that led the delegation to South Africa. So we should know that dialogue has always been there. They were the one in the diaspora that said, go back and discuss with the people back at home. When they came back, everybody says they need an inclusive dialogue. Maybe people don't know the difference between inclusive dialogue, because we had an inclusive dialogue and now people are asking for a bilateral dialogue, which we should not misquote these two things. When we talk about inclusive, it means everybody is supposed to be there. But I get some people saying that the government should dialogue with those in the diaspora. That make it not to be inclusive, because I myself, I am a Cameroonian, I'm supposed to be there. All walks of life is supposed to be there in the dialogue to make it inclusive. So we should know the definition of terminology before we come out to say what we want to say. Now, about those that were invited, is for sure some came. Some refused to come. They gave their own reason. But it would be a shame for us to think that we should leave Cameroon to go and dialogue in another country in the name of whatsoever. Even all these people, we are even talking about them in the diaspora, I don't hear them talking again for a long while. I don't want to go into those aspects, but I pity those that are there fighting that those people in the diaspora will come for their aid or whatsoever. They are growing fat. There are things that I would not like to expose, but I pity those that are in the bushes, hoping that those are the people that will come and mediate for
you
so, in essence, I'm just telling those in the bushes that they should forget about those people.
Are you by chance saying that the dialogue has been so effective that there is no need again for robust action, because the U.S. government from the outing of the State Department is clear that dialogue has failed, that they are calling for effective dialogue?
That's where I'll go in. My first sentence I said here is that we had dialogue in the 60s, we have dialogue in the early 1990s, we had dialogue 2 years ago, the Prime Minister just had dialogue, and we'll keep on having dialogue. Okay. When you and I will not be here, because Cameroon, we are already old, our children will keep on dialoguing. So that is a concept. We should understand that as Cameroonians, we will keep on dialoguing. Now, sharing of responsibility.
Yes. I
got many people paying attention on just two people. Some say the government, some say the separatists. Nobody thinks about the people themselves of the Northwest and Southwest. The sovereignty of a state lies on the people, and the people are the ones that decide to give the government. So the people have power more than the government.
So the people have the power to resolve this conflict.
The people, okay. Let me come now to this aspect. Have we seen with all of us here, if we are hypocritic, but we want to say the truth, have we seen villages that people in the villages have beaten out Amber boys and sent them out of their village and they are in peace? Have we not seen it? We have seen it. If everybody says there is no village, that person is a hypocrite. Because we've seen villages where the people themselves got up and decide to put the people. So what am I saying? I'm saying that there are three people, category of people. We are in a democratic country. So these people now have elected the government, and the government have their sole power to lead them. But that government cannot do it alone without that people.
So it's a shared responsibility.
Yes, the people can even take a decision without the government, but the government cannot take the decision without the people. Okay. So this is the aspect we should understand. The people need to collaborate with the government. Okay. And that's the only choice.
Thank you. We'll be coming back to you. Mutagha, you've listened to Kedia. The Cameroon Renaissance movement, since this conflict started, they've been advocating for dialogue. When we look at what is happening now, who has that principal responsibility in resolving this conflict from a political standpoint? And your party, what's your party seeing as who has a responsibility in resolving this war?
Mr. Tah, I would like first of all to give some legal parameters, instruments of war, because we are talking of war in the northwest and southwest region of Cameroon. If we look at international laws, the first thing we have to bear in mind is that the first component regulates the condition of war, that's the jus ad bellum, Metro understands it, and then the second component has to do with the condition of warring, that's the jus in bello. Now, the law of war defines sovereignty, it defines states and territory, occupation, and other critical terms of international law. Now, when you come to modern laws of war, it has to do with what? The declaration of war. Modern laws of war has to do with the declaration of war. It has to do with the acceptance of surrender and the treatment of prisoners of war. It has to do with military necessity along with distinction and proportionality, and then the prohibition of weapons that may cause unnecessary suffering. So if you look at what is going on in the northwest region, we find out, first of all, is there any military necessity? We find out. Now we look at along it, the proportionality of the force used by the government, regular forces, the soldiers to fight the separatist fighters. Is it proportionate? Now, if you want to go into technical details, you understand that there have been violations, especially from the regular forces, the forces of law and order, the military, and they could equally have been some violations too from the separatist leaders themselves. It's not the very first time. You find that when you look at the war between Japan, especially in 1930, Japan had to use chemical weapons against the Wush massacre, when they did the Wush massacre. Italy also used mustard seed gas against Abyssinia in 1935. Now, Japan used again chemical weapons against China in 1938 and 1941. Now, coming to the war going on in the northwest and southwest region, we are talking of the Cameroon Renaissance movement. The Cameroon Renaissance movement has been advocating on the fact that the war in the northwest and southwest region is a war that would have been avoided by the regime in place, which is that of my panelist year's political party, Mr. Kedia's political party, the CPDM. They would have avoided this war if they had taken all necessary precautions, bearing in mind that war starts without anybody consent and can never end just easily as we think we can stop it. Now, the Grand National Dialogue came and gone. The CRM advocated for an inclusive dialogue. When I heard Mr. Kedia spoke here, he spoke with a lot of alacrity, but I think his argument lacks substance, because if we are talking of an inclusive dialogue has to do with the belligerents. They are the ones that need to be brought at the table of dialogue. When they are talking of a dialogue that will need to end war, they are talking of the belligerents. That's what we talk of an inclusive dialogue. If we estimate that the dialogue was to end the war in the northwest and southwest region, I think the leaders of the Amazonian state, the purported state of Amazonia, I think then they are still in prison. I thought the Swiss dialogue would have been held, because the Swiss dialogue was going to give a platform for negotiation on terms of how that dialogue, the really inclusive dialogue that was supposed to take place in Cameroon here, will be done. Now we heard the former Catholic leader who died, I think Cardinal Toumé, Christian Cardinal Toumé wanted a dialogue, an Anglophone dialogue, because remember that the Anglophone crisis broke out with the Anglophones revendicating certain alienations. So he wanted to prepare a fertile ground for that dialogue to hold. We saw the former mayor of Boya categorically refused that dialogue was not going to hold, and it was a CPDM mayor. So in a nutshell, if we want to be very frank on this, I think that those who have been pretending to be in favor of a dialogue are the CPDM surrogates and even the CPDM party itself, because they will claim they want a dialogue, whereas in the nutshell they want to organize a monologue. The Cameroon Renaissance movement said this emphatically, that if a dialogue would be held that will satisfy the aspirations of the entire nation and bring peace to the Northwest and Southwest region, international partners like the United Nations, it has the African Union, you have the big nations, you have France, you have the United States of America, you have Great Britain, you have Germany, and other partners who are well advanced in terms of democracy would have to come in and they see how they can mediate in this in resolving the crisis. But Cameroon, because they like cosmetic measures, had to organize the Grand National Dialogue in violation of all proposals that were submitted by diplomatic partners. You know, sometimes they are just behaving like, you know, when you give a child a piece of meat and then you ask the child to give you the piece of meat, the child will refuse, forgetting to know that the pot of meat that you gave the child that piece of meat is still with you. These guys are those who, the United Nations and all international partners were those who came to Cameroon. They were involved in the partition of Cameroon, especially during the colonial period. And then they are those who are well advanced in democracy. They are well advanced in diplomacy. They know particular parameters of democracy and diplomacy that when employed will lead to a lasting solution to any war that is going on. I want to tell you that the Biya regime blatantly avoided, let me say, trampled upon all those proposals that were made.
But your party has advocated or is still advocating for federation, am I correct? And your party still believe that there is need for all these belligerents to sit on the table and dialogue. If they were to dialogue in terms of what is happening now, what would that be? What would they take into consideration in terms of ending this conflict, which has been for 4 years now? Briefly, so that we go to other men.
Yes, you talk of the Cameroon Renaissance movement believing in terms of vying in for federation. I think the Cameroon Renaissance movement has never thought of acting like an autocratic party or maybe a kind of a party that works like in a dictatorship. We had said this emphatically, that if there is any form of state that will be accepted, it should be the form of state that is decided by a universal will.
On the table? On
the table, and not that which is decided by the Cameroon Renaissance movement. Secondly, we are for the opinion that a fresh dialogue be organized that will take in consideration the aspirations of everyone. Okay. They sit at the table of dialogue and then see how they can arrive at a consensus with all the points that will be brought forward by the different parties taken into consideration, and that no point should be a taboo. Like you find the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement, they said the form of a state is a taboo. So we of the CRM do not think that the form of the state is a taboo. So it's something that is debatable.
Coming back to you, let me take on some few messages. Then we'll get to Barrister Tamfu before going to Mr. Ngalim, because I want Barrister Tamfu to get a clarification. Then Mr. Ngalim too, who is a human advocate, who will have to clarify that before we continue the discussion. Those of you watching us on Facebook, want to say happy Sunday to you. Happy Sunday to Adele Betel. Happy Sunday to Daniel, happy Sunday to Nsangong, Franklin, Erico Jombos, Raymond J, happy Sunday to John Filingo, happy Sunday to Godi, Nyonkoni, happy Sunday to you, Brian Cyprian, Piccolo Daisy, happy Sunday to you, Jeep Tabe Ebot, happy Sunday to you, Rene Manti, happy Sunday to Samuel Tabi, happy Sunday to you, Quincy Jones, Njifo, Erico Jombos, Roland Aminke, Yaya Rolin, Precious Atem, Obi, happy Sunday to you, Stephanie, Picono Daisy, happy Sunday to you, Simit Bright, happy Sunday, Rene Dumze, Andy, Maclan, happy Sunday to you, Isobu, Araji, Blackleg, happy Sunday to you, So all those of you watching us on social media, I want to happy Sunday to you. Keep your conversation going. Send us an SMS on the number on your screen. And in case you may want to be a panelist of our program for subsequent edition, the number is on your screen. You can get to us. Barrister Tamfu, you've listened to Mutagha, and also I'm sure you've listened to Kedia. As far as this conflict is concerned, Kedia is stating emphatically that dialogue has been ongoing and that the dialogue has been inclusive dialogue inclusive, and he believes that it is a system of dialogue that's going to resolve this conflict. But we've not seen this war going anytime soon. It might move from a then gun period to AK-47. Now we are moving to IED. The situation is complex.
Yes, the situation is very complex because politicians have taken it and making their bread. Everybody will tell you, we are doing this, we want to do this, and you will see the ping-pong game. But we should not deviate from the principal objective. Now, it is not the Cameroon Renaissance movement who is leading Cameroon. I think the political party that's leading Cameroon is CPDM, who has the president. But I don't even want to take it that way. Let's put the politics aside. Let's be objective. Cameroon has a leader. We have to solve a pressing problem. And to believe or think that the war in the Northwest and the Southwest is like other wars that we have with countries, opposing countries, is making a very fatal mistake. The war in the Northwest and South is not a regular, it's not a conventional war, it's not a normal war. It's a misunderstanding between two actors. If we have a country which is headed by a president, the people he is killing in the Northwest and the Southwest are his subjects. Those are Cameroonians that have been killed by other Cameroonians. So it is not a war. There is no, we know that if Cameroon really wanted to fight war with separatists, I don't see if they will be able to measure their arsenals, because when you look at the 20th May marches, you see the number of bees, armed forces, machine guns, and everything that they have. If they want to crush the Ambazonians who are using Dane guns or who are now using explosives or whatsoever, it would have been, the fight could not even stay for 5 seconds. Because these separatists, they have drones, they know where, the government knows where to find them. The government knows the leaders who are sponsoring them. The government even has international partners who have said, okay, this is what we think. When the crisis was buoyant, I saw series of diplomats coming to Cameroon to talk to Mr. Biya. I was hoping that Mr. Biya was listening to them. We had Commonwealth that came. We had Thibault Nagy that came. We had
UN Secretary General.
They were coming.
Everybody
was coming and telling Mr. Biya, you are the one having the solution. And all Cameroonians were hoping, knowing that, oh, at last, Mr. Biya, who is always giving deaf ear to revendications, will listen. But he continued to do what he knows best, to snub at Cameroonians. Cameroonians will give you mandate and you snub at them. That's being irresponsible. So I will continue to say and maintain that the legal responsibility lies on the head of state, who has the mandate of Cameroonians. And it is because he's acting in bad faith. Because he will not tell me that
Kedia said the head of state has called for inclusive dialogue, that the head of state dispatched ministers to this.
That is why I say we will not leave countries. That's why I say we will not leave.
And they said, Kedia said, the people from the diaspora said you should come and dialogue with the people at home.
That is why I say politicians will continue to keep us astray because they have their political gains. I'm not surprised that even among the people he has been sending, there are some of them who do not want this war to come to an end because their pockets, they are building mansions, they are fitting fat, and the suffering civilian populations are there suffering.
Okay.
They're in the bushes as well. You need to be with those people and see what they are living. You need to visit the prisons and see what they are living. The hardship is too much.
Okay. We'll be coming back to you, Barrister Tamfu. Let's get to Mr. Ngalim. Mr. Ngalim, I want you to react on this, what Kedia said, that dialogue has been ongoing and it's been an inclusive process, that the sole responsibility in resolving this conflict is not only on the government of Cameroon, but it's to be shared between the government of Cameroon, the people of the North and Southwest region, alongside the separatists. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I listened to Kedia with a lot of attention, and if you just listened to him, to his preliminary words, you might be lost on what we're talking about. We are not saying here that dialogue is not necessary, or that dialogue is something that could be conducted in any manner. We are saying that some institution has the legal responsibility to end the war. That is our point of conversation today. And I'm very happy that Barrister Tamfu has outlined some constitutional and legal obligations compelling the head of state to guarantee the security, the safety, and the protection of civilians, meaning he has a responsibility to end the war. But talking about ongoing dialogue, I often hear some people kind of categorize some conversations as dialogue. When we're talking about dialogue to end a conflict, we're talking about two people who are in conflict. And for any dialogue to end a conflict to be successful, we need the two parties to agree on the terms of the dialogue. You know, Yaoundé could not sit and then organize a conference, invite the other belligerent party to come and attend without some groundwork being done. And one thing is, we should not forget that we should not pretend that this, like as if this conflict came out of the blues. It's not. It's something that grew up, it took time, it was prepared, and I sometimes I'm tempted to be convinced that the government was aware that it was going to get to this. Because, you know, in 1996, the CIA had warned the American government and the Cameroonian government that this was going to lead to some, that the treatment of the former Southern Cameroons was going to be a problem in the future. The government ignored that. But even looking at what has happened, I think it was in 1965 or so, Fonlon wrote a memo to President Ahidjo that it's time to sit down and evaluate the union. It was ignored. All steps to sit and evaluate the union have been ignored. And dialogue can only be successful when we put in place very important monitoring and evaluation strategies. Any manager knows that to evaluate policy, to evaluate the success of policy, or to evaluate what has been put in place, you need to put in time-bound indicators and milestones to see how far you are progressing with your policies and your strategies. These have never been put. Let us for one moment pretend that the Grand National Dialogue was a dialogue aimed at resolving this conflict, because I don't believe it was. Okay, 2 years down the line, has anyone sat to evaluate how effective the Grand National Dialogue has been, or any of those steps that Kedia said the president has taken to resolve this conflict? Has anyone, the president and his team, have they sat down to evaluate how far or how successful these their strategies have been? Because if I were to do that evaluation, I would conclude that the strategies have failed. You know, in 2016, as you said, Javis, there were no guns. We just had catapults and stones on the streets. 2018-19, we then saw sophisticated weapons. 2021, we are seeing improvised explosive devices. What are we going to see next year? What are we going to see the next year? So we should at least be humble enough to recognize the fact that we are not all-knowing and we make mistakes. And, you know, when everybody says that there is need to sit down and talk, it is not because people hate Kedia and his group. It is not because people hate anybody. It is because people believe and know that talking resolves problems. So pretending that what happens is dialogue and that what has been happening all along has been dialogue is off the mark. Because for us to have dialogue to resolve this conflict, the two parties at least need to agree on some preliminaries. Where are we going to talk? Are we going to talk face-to-face, or should we bring in a third party? Because the relationship between Cameroon and the Ambazonian movement has broken down terribly, that I do not see it possible for the two of them to sit and talk without a third party. By the way, when we talk about the Grand National Dialogue, and we claim that the Ambazonians were invited to attend. At least forget about the Ayabachos who are in the diaspora. Think about Sisiko, who is in Yaoundé. Why did they not take him to the dialogue? Or
I'm sure by Tamfu is that when he was arrested,
only when he was being taken from Nigeria. So these are some very little and important questions that we really need to analyze and ask ourselves the real questions. But the African Commission of Human and People's Rights.
Let me do a follow up. Maybe the head of state will say they are afraid that if they brought in Seseko, the Ambazonian people will say Seseko and the rest have been compromised, as often the case. So the government was avoiding the nuance of being tagged that they are bribed to Seseko and Co and forcing them to dialogue under chains.
That is a very powerful assumption, which of course means that if the government wants to assume on behalf of Ambazonians that Ambazonians would accuse Sisiko of having been compromised, then the government could equally use other strategies to bring different people in. The only alternative to such an assumption should not be keeping them away. The government could dispatch someone to talk to all Ambazonians. They know them. They know the leaders. They know who can represent Ambazonians. The Swiss HD has invited some to Switzerland. They know them. The African Commission of Human and People's Rights invited SCAPO and SCNC to sit down and talk with the government. The government has since never showed up. So it's not a question of being compromised here or there. It's a question of the government's goodwill. The government does not want to do the basics, does not want to do the backdoor pre-negotiation to talk.
Okay.
And if that is done, this problem is going to be resolved within the twinkle of an eye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Javis.
Yeah, I will come into you. Maybe I'll come to you, Kedia. Many say the messages I'm reading here says that the President of the Republic has failed woefully in resolving this conflict, that the responsibility lies on the CPDM government that have failed, and that there is need for this government to go before this conflict is resolved. What's your assertion looking at this reality, plus the fact that guns assist smoking? If the dialogue were that effective as you had indicated of inclusiveness, why is it that we have instead moved from guns to IED plus AK-47?
In any house, when there's a problem, the father is responsible. Even if the children, the mother, they have caused one or two disorder, but the father is the responsible one to control the home. So those of them accusing the government is democracy, is their legitimate right, because when they accuse the government, it's because the government is the only person they can turn to. They cannot turn to separatists either. Now, when this crisis started, please, we should have this terminology defined. We have those that are okay with the unitary system. We have federalists, we have confederationalists, and we have separatists. These are the major people that are there. So now to dialogue, they said they need an inclusive dialogue, meaning that all these people must be there equally. Federalists must be there, unitary system must be there, confederationalists will be there, and separatists. That is why we call it inclusive dialogue. Everybody must be inclusive. Now, when many people were saying this, they didn't surely know the meaning of what they were asking. Now, when the inclusive dialogue
when you say many,
no, I'm coming. Because even people in my, even people
streamline the many, because
now, excuse me, please. I have listed the various people, right? We have federalists, we have confederationalists, we have unitary people, and we have separatists, right? Yes. Inclusive means talk with all of them. But now, when you come out to say, okay, fine, the government of the Republic of Cameroon should discuss with the separatists because they are the ones that have picked up arms. You are directly saying that, okay, fine, let the government exclude those for unitary system. Let the government exclude federalists. Let the government exclude those for confederation, and now dialogue now with those that have picked up arms. If the government is dialoguing only with those that have picked up arms, then you should not call it inclusive, because not everybody is included. That's why I'm going back to the definition of this terminology.
The text,
now, coming back now.
Let me just guide you. Looking at the current situation of the war in the northwest and southwest region, which form of dialogue is your party looking at that can resolve this conflict? You say many people were thinking about inclusive dialogue, and we have seen that it seems the inclusiveness has failed. Which other context that your party is going in for in resolving this conflict?
You remember the last time when there was rumored that the government is planning a dialogue with Ayok Seseku? You remember many Cameroonians that are here, the former attorney, there's Mboya, I think so, and other politicians. They came out to say if there is dialogue, it should not be only with Seseku. They are also important and they must be inside. So there are certain times that, yes, there is a problem and everybody needs solution and everybody propose things in their own perspective so that they'll get solution. But they should also know that there are other aspects that the government sees. Government does not look at only the give solution that will have other impacts. That's the first thing. We should not forget that in this country, the name separation did not start with
Northwest. My question. My question is, which form of dialogue now is your party looking at to resolve this? Because you've said inclusive, people talk about inclusive, that they forgot that that was the inclusive they were talking about.
President Paul Biya is the president of the republic and he will keep on dialoguing with all Cameroonians. He will not keep no one behind.
Both inclusive and...
He will not keep no one behind. If we are still honest before God and man, we are saying that government should talk with the separatists. Are we not witness here on this platform and those at home watching us that the government wanted to discuss with these guys in the diaspora? They asked them to meet as Swiss for the Swiss dialogue and they asked for 5,000 euro. Who is ignorant about it?
Okay.
We all know that they say that before they go to Swiss and dialogue, they should give them 5,000 euro. Who is ignorant about it? If you are ignorant about it, you tell me, I will hear. But who, if before God and man, who is ignorant about it? So that is the situation. I know you are a lawyer of the Cameroon Renaissance movement. No. When they talk about CPDM and when they are talking about Cameroon Renaissance movement, they say no. And you know there are two of them. Why should we do that? They have been calling CPDM. We know that they are members of their party that have been in the diaspora that has participated in fundraising for those fighting arms. We have seen it. It's in the social media. Members of the Cameroon Renaissance movement.
Is it an established fact?
Secondly, we know, in fact, I know that maybe you...
No, we're educating Cameroonians, please.
The videos are there on social media, we've all seen it.
Okay.
And lastly, to conclude, the money for COVID, 900 million, that they embezzle about 300 million.
No, but we are not
it shows that they don't have the moral value to...
Kedia, we are not talking about COVID here. We are talking about the
legal... You don't want me to learn, you call me on the... I want to discuss the...
I want you to learn, I want you to
discuss with them.
I want you to talk in context of the topic. I want you to talk in context.
Even when I talk about...
in context of...
Even in the context, you stop me.
Okay.
You stop me more than 4 times.
No, continue, Kedia.
Even when I was not talking about your party, you stopped me more than 4 times.
I was guiding you to look at the topic.
Call it guiding.
Continue. I was guiding you to look at the topic as to the legality of resolving this conflict. That what is your party proposing as far as a form of dialogue is concerned?
And you say I've not answered your question, but when you asked me this question, I said the president of the republic will keep on dialoguing with all Cameroonians and he will not allow any single Cameroonian out for dialogue. That's my answer I gave you. You still turn around, you ask me the same question. I will still answer you for the second time or the third time or the fourth time. The president of the republic will keep on dialoguing with all Cameroonians. Okay. Be you a buyer and seller, be you a separatist of good faith, be you a federalist, a confederationalist, whatever walk of life, the president is ready to dialogue with all Cameroonians because he believes that all Cameroonians have something to give for the growth of their nation and nobody will be excluded. That's the answer I gave you, but you said that I did not answer your question. No. So I don't know if you had another
specific question. I will get to Barrister Tamfu, but you talked about the fact that inclusive dialogue, and you talked about the fact that we have bilateral dialogue. So I was asking on the context of the nature of dialogue, if you say the head of state is considered is ambiguous, I was asking about what you said. I was quoting you, not quoting myself. Barrister Tamfu, briefly react on this so I would take a reaction from Mr. Sama and alongside Jan Dennis. We will come back to you, Sir Mutagha. Let's briefly.
Mr. Kedia, nobody on this panel is more Cameroonian than any other. We are all Cameroonians, and if we are talking about this topic today, let's respect those who are watching us. We are here to educate. We are not here to do the shouting of the arrogance of the CPDM from left and right.
About what the government should do, what CPDM is doing.
When you speak, we should respect.
We are talking about the government.
This is a very respectable program watched by so many important persons. And so when we are here, let's respect ourselves. When you were talking, I stayed quiet. When I also talk, please suffer to stay quiet. I say nobody is more Cameroonian than whosoever. We have a problem which is before us. How do we resolve, or who is a legal person or who is legally responsible as far as the war in the Northwest and Southwest is concerned? We should not be deceiving ourselves. It is bringing us nowhere. This movement in the Northwest and Southwest doesn't date today. If you have some knowledge, some background knowledge of the history of Cameroon, the secession movement has just exploded some few years back. We know how the government has always done everything possible to silence those who have always come to reivindicate. We had the Southern Cameroon National Council. You know about that? Even right to the point where the parliamentarian Honorable Weber came to parliament and wanted to throw flash that be careful, watch out, is going to be above you. The same attitude of CPDM or politicians as you are doing wanted him to
CPDM. Want me to call FDIC?
We are free. Silent the representative of the people who came to he was like a watchdog that please, there is something that is happening or that will happen. Do something, and he was not listened to. Now, we should move, we should be looking ahead. We said, who is responsible to put an end? Except you want to tell me that the President of the Republic, which is the head of your party, has failed. Or because had it been, we were not into a crisis, would have congratulated him that, okay, the leader of the CPDM has resolved the Anglophone problem. If we are still into this war today, it is because he has failed, or the measure that he has been putting in place are not working, or the people he has been entrusting assignment to, they are not honest to him. Let's face facts. The facts are there, clear to us. You say you don't know with who to talk. Late Kedia Tomi tried to have Cameroonians talk to themselves. They refused. The major national dialogue was organized without the principal actors, which is still, whereas the person was there. So to sit here and say, oh, the President of the Republic continues to dialogue. Yes, the President of the Republic continues, he is dialoguing, but he is dialoguing with the people that he chooses. He is not dialoguing with the people with whom they have issues or who are reivindicating issues. He selects his people, they sit and they drink.
Okay.
So that is a problem. So we should not be beating it. Politics, sincerely, let's put politics aside.
You keep on calling CPDM, but want to put
let's when I say putting politics, that let's stop defending our political chapters. Let's be objective and let's have pity. Let's have pity for Cameroonians who are suffering.
We're coming back to you briefly. Kedia will be coming back briefly. Just 1 minute reactions. I'll go to and we'll get an intervention from Sama. Then you come, or we'll get to Sama first before you come.
I want to say that Mr. Kedia is free to call the CRM.
No. I said within the context, we are not talking about COVID. We are talking about the war in the Northwest and Southwest region.
He's free to call the CRM as often as he wishes, only if he's calling it with the right frame of his mind. But I find that he's not calling the CRM with the right frame of his mind. I'm quite very honest. I will call the CPDM with the right frame of my mind. I am not kind of a demagogic politician. You spoke here of 5,000 euro that the separatists asked for as precondition for the Swiss dialogue to be held. I don't think there is any amount of money that is worth human life. If that's what they asked from this government, 5,000, just only 5,000 euro, and the government refused, then this is a bloody regime. Secondly, you spoke of the Federalist, that the dialogue was an inclusive dialogue because it has to do with Federalists and all the like. I want to tell you that Ayuk Tabe, Wilfred Tassang, you have the Mark Baratas and the rest. These are guys, in 2016, they were federalists. They only got radicalized because the government, gentlemen, with all due respect for your political affiliation, I think you give me the chance to talk. They were all federalists. They only got radicalized because of the arrogance of the regime in place. You talk of those who are for decentralization and all the like. These guys have mere wishes. They have never had any genuine will to push it forward, because decentralization was voted in 1996. You only had to come up at the table for application due to the separatist movement. So if the dialogue had to be organized without these major actors, and you tell us it was an inclusive dialogue, I don't know whether there's a different kind of grammar. I have to go back to secondary school, university, back to them.
But I know.
And then another allegation I want to refute categorically and for the listeners whom I respect so well, is that there is never a day the CRM would ever buy the ideology of separation. That's why you saw when Professor Maurice Kamto went to Europe, these guys had conflict with him. They run into conflict with him because they wanted him to recognize them as a movement and dialogue with them. He said, okay, if you want to dialogue with me as Ambazonians, I don't think this is the right place for me to talk with you. You could come when there will be a dialogue. Maybe you have, like I told you, the representatives of the United Nations, the European Union, the African Union, and all the like, the diplomatic partners who sit at the table. You come there with your legitimate claims. If you claim they are legitimate, you table there as a state. We will dialogue there. But if you come, I don't want to be identified as those who are for strict separation.
Thank you.
So when he says there is social network, this and all the like, I think it's not really good for the image of those who want to educate the public and who respect the public.
Thank you. We want to acknowledge you, Gregory from Bamenda, Pickwick Gregory from Bamenda. All those of you sending us message, we'll have time to read them briefly. Let's go and take a reaction from Sir Abang Sama Abang concerning this topic, and in a similar line we will take also that of Jan Dennis of the PAP party.
Yes, so as I was saying before the breakup of connection, the primary responsibility for bringing an end to our own and ourselves rests squarely on the shoulders of the government, which has been mandate to ensure and guarantee that there is law and order, there is peace, there is security of both persons and property in the northern and southern, which is far from what is on the ground at the moment. It is not just a legal or constitutionally provided responsibility and duty, but it is also a moral obligation of the state to ensure that its citizens live in peace and security. But in asserting the role of the state, the primary role of the state and the supreme role of the state to ensure this, we cannot turn a blind eye to the excuse me. We cannot turn a blind eye to the role of the citizens who are part of that social contract. There is a mutuality of responsibility on the state as well as there is on the citizens. That takes me to this common security slogan that I observed in neighboring Nigeria, which is used as an educative slogan to encourage citizens to participate in ensuring peace and security within their towns and localities. It is a slogan of, if you see something, say something. The police and military cannot be everywhere at every time. And so it is incumbent on the citizens to participate in bringing an end to war in the northern and the southern by cooperating. That puts a responsibility on the citizens to help the military, to help the authorities of the ground to help administration fight whatever enemy the administration has identified as enemies of the state. So there ought to be collaboration between security forces, defense forces, and the population. That now is the moral responsibility of the citizens. I know you might say I am digressing because you are question focused on the legal responsibility, but we can't really separate the legal responsibility from the moral responsibility, because the citizens don't have a role to play. Where there is that rift between the military, the administration, the state, and the citizen, then putting an end to the war in the north and the southwest is elusive. We must bring in the role of the citizens, which now is what I call under you see something, you say something. By exposing those that you consider are a threat, those that you consider are working against the interests of the state and the community, those that you think are benefiting from the war situation, those that you think are encouraging, are accomplices, are complacent, and making it difficult for the war to be ended. You see something, you see something. That now brings into play the military-civilian partnership, which unfortunately is what we don't have at the moment, because there is a suspicion gap, there is a trust gap between the civilians who ought to be security agents, civilians, security agents for the state, to report cases of threat within the communities. There is that gap because people can't trust even the military, because even among the security forces there are moles. Who are those I call those? Those who feed information to the enemy against their colleagues and against those who reveal information to the military. It makes it difficult. But if you accept with me, Javis, from these two, you understand that there is a responsibility, a legal responsibility of the state as provided for in legal instruments, because it is the duty of the state by virtue of the existence of a social contract. But there is a moral responsibility on the citizens who are the victims, as we speak, of the war situation. They can't carry out business as usual. They can't live a life of security and peace as usual. They can't engage in their projects as usual, and so they are the primary victims. So there is a legal responsibility on the state, and there's a moral responsibility on the citizens.
There is a legal responsibility of the state and moral responsibility of the citizen, and that is coming from Aban, someone who is watching us in Boya. I want us to go to Jan Dennis, who is the PAP president, to get his reaction on this same topic before we come back to the members of the panel.
Asking about who holds the legality in ending the ongoing conflict in the northwest and the southwest, or let me say in former southern Cameroons, it is a question that I think we all really know the answer. There was already a legal procedure that was already put in place for the two states to come together to form a federal structure. I think there were two states, two entities that wanted to reunify, and they had to put a legal framework. And that legal framework was put in place by the United Nations under the plebiscite. And through that plebiscite, the two states came together, and what we will find today, the 1961 Fungan Conference, that led to the birth of the federal structure. So, even though right up to date, the legal framework was not really structured or was not really rectified, because right today there are still some school of thought who feel that the fact that the United Nations gave room for Southern Cameroonians to willingly and freely join, but the legal procedure was not completed. And that is why, right up to date, some people are of the opinion that it It is true the union came together, but it was not solidified under a union treaty. So there was already a legal framework, there was a legality, but the legality was not yet completed. But anyways, throughout that period, there was a gentleman agreement for the two states to come under the federal structure, of which there was a legal framework that was put in place through a federal constitution, and which the federal constitution stipulated clear that no matter what other condition, no matter what happens, the federal structure should not be touched. And that is Article 47 like that. So we all find ourselves that even within the fact that there was no legal treaty, but the two people still lived. There was West Cameroon, there was East Cameroon. In fact, there was a federal structure. Unfortunately, we saw the systematic maneuver by the regime, the Republic of Cameroon, from Aïdjo and to Paul Biya, who systematically decided to destroy everything, all the foundation that was put in place in the federal structure, irrespective of the fact that there was just a gentleman and there was no problem. They had a well carved out scheme to assimilate the people of the former Southern Cameroons. So it is within that framework that today, when we are seeing the armed conflict is not an issue of today. I think if there was that legality that was fully respected, I think we didn't find ourselves where we are today. And I think there was a group, Southern Cameroonians have been struggling to ensure that that legal framework should be binding, and that's why there was the formation of the SCNC. It was SCNC, I think SCNC, yes. There was a group that was found called the SCNC, and their motto was the force of argument and not argument of force. And they table this issue, and whenever they want to come up, the Republic of Cameroon will always use intimidation, coercion, and arrest, threats, and all the like. So it has existed for long, to a point where there was a case in Banjul at the African Commission for Freedom and Human Rights and Freedom, where they tabled a situation for the restoration of their territory, and the court gave the verdict was in favor of the Southern Cameroonians, and up to date, the Republic of Cameroon, with all their machinery put in place and lobby with France behind them, everything has just gone like that, and nothing is being spoken. And if the Republic of Cameroon feel that they are not guilty of the illegality of what they are doing, I think they would have had come up with enough argument to prove to Southern Cameroonians that their actions are illegal. But all today we only see what they do. They are using the word called the argument.
Okay, that's John Dennis. I'm sure we have about 10 minutes to go because we started a kind of bit late, 10 to 15 minutes to go, started a bit late. I'll come back to you. I know you are on standby. Mr. Ngalim will be coming back to you. Please just be on standby. So Mutagha will come to you. I know you had time to react on that. I'm kind of confused here. Maybe let's start with Barrister Tamfu before going to Mr. Ngalim. Then I'll come to you and before going to Robert, so I will change the order. So Robert should speak last as far as this section is concerned. Let me get to you, sir. Many will say that it's not just the president alone, that there is a National Assembly, as we've been seeing in other countries, the National Assembly that has the lawmakers who have that mandate to say, okay, if the president has failed in resolving this conflict, it is time for that arm of the government, the National Assembly, to sit and look at the issue, resolving this conflict. The legality, does it still not fall at the level of the National Assembly? Should we not look at them, or only looking at the president? Let's say the president has failed. Should the situation be like this?
Okay, if we accept that the president has failed, sovereignty lies or rests within the people. And those who are at the National Assembly are representatives of the people. So if we can acknowledge for certain that the president has failed,
yes,
we now, the people who are representing, the representation that we have in the National Assembly, if they really wanted to solve the problem, they could also come on stage. When you have a problem, all avenues in seeking the solutions are favorable. Like we have seen that the head of state has failed because the people gave the mandate to him. Think back and see if we can solve it. At the National Assembly, we have people who represent the people.
Voted,
elected. So, meaning that we could also turn to them. If they were working, maybe they will have been, the people, the parliamentarians will have been seeing that, oh, the President of the Republic has not taken up his responsibility. Okay, it's our own turn maybe to agitate ourselves and then present something to me. But I remember very well that instead of doing that, parliamentarians instead tend to send query letters to international partners that, oh, we don't want you to come and solve our problems. So even at the level of the parliament, the representation that is there is not a genuine representation, because we know how obese it is. It is a one-side party who is there. In the 180 parliamentarians at the National Assembly, more than 3/4 are made up of CPDM members, who are the ones whose president is heading the country and who has failed, meaning that even at the level of the parliament, it will still fail. Okay. They have not had any will. We even saw how the SDF one time came out and proved barbaric, shouting with vuvuzela at the National Assembly. Still yet, they could not overturn the number, because 7 out of 180, the other people just walked out and they stayed there and were ridiculed. So if the head of state has failed, sovereignty, accepting that sovereignty rests in the people too have a role to play. But how do the people who are not armed be able to stop those who have arms? Okay. That is where the problem is. You will not ask me to go and assault somebody who is armed. So the thing has to be treated with tact. And like I say, we have not yet lost everything. I still believe that if we are sincere, if we are genuine to ourselves, we can still put an end to this. Not lost.
Exactly. Okay. Good day to you in the studio. Please to sit in the studio and talk about party and politics is more painful to us in the Northwest. It is not about politics. It is clear that the President Biya, having been elected by Cameroonians, have acted in bad faith after 5 years of continuous killing. Have not stopped. This is coming from Mr. Jonas from Bamenda. Some messages are being sent to people. When you send us an SMS, be a bit Republican. Good day, Javis. Interesting programs, but next time, know the type of. Okay, thank you. Your message is gotten. This other one says, good day to you all in the studio. I love the program. It is coming from Stone in Bamenda. Good afternoon, House of Commons. Nice program. Good afternoon to you all. I think I'm Joseph Tonzi in Yaoundé. More than 8 people were killed in my village, Bafanji, last 2 weeks. Condolence. This other one says, Kedia is beating around the bush. Message read. Please, can you tell? Okay, message read. Good afternoon, sir. I am Peter from Tico. Nothing good will come out from this regime. No, from the ethics of journalism, I cannot read messages that are attacking people. Maybe I get to Mr. Ngalim. Let's get your take on this. Does the parliament not have that power to probe into this government and say, hey, we have now the legality to resolve this conflict?
But before I get to that, let me just try to clarify one issue. When we come to a panel like this, it is to share our opinions and try to educate the public. Rowdiness and personal attacks are really not necessary, and they derail the objectives of coming. I come to this panel because I know it's respectful and it has an objective of educating the people. People are dying, and we need to help solve this problem. That's why I come here. If we come to play party politics or to shout about party politics, then it doesn't actually serve the purpose. That said, Montesquieu, when he came out with the concept of separation of powers, he actually said there should be 3. The executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, so that each could hold the other accountable. But what we find in Cameroon is, I'm sorry to say, but the legislature cannot hold the executive accountable for legislative action. And the reason is the strategy that is used through elections of members of parliament. You would agree and remember that the CPDM endorses their candidates, and the hierarchy of the CPDM, which is the President of the Republic, the head of the executive, and the chairman of the CPDM, endorses candidates on what they call investiture. They invest their candidates so that the candidates can qualify for mayoral positions and for parliamentary seats. With this, you know that the members of parliament owe their obligations to the head of state and to the CPDM and not to the people. On the other hand, Elekam is fashioned in such a way that the CPDM is going to win all elections. The Constitutional Council is constituted of members of the CPDM.
Let me do a follow-up.
Based on their
Let me do a follow-up.
Based on their neutrality, and all of these were quashed. So it's...
Can I do a follow-up?
Parliament is supposed... Let me land, Javis. The Parliament is supposed to hold government responsible for their actions, but the CPDM Parliament in Cameroon does not pass the most simple of tests to hold the CPDM responsible to end the war. So I think civil society and the international community need to do more to end this war. Thank you. My
follow-up to you now. You talk about the Elekam members of CPDM, but in the Constitutional Council, we have some SDF members of the Constitutional Council. We have some SDF members who, and some civil society at the Elekam, Abril. Are you saying that all of these other opposition members and civil society in Elekam and Constitutional Council are all members of the CPDM? The government will say it is bringing all parties on board. And
the question about Elekam, first of all, should not be who is on the seat, whether it's SDF or CPDM. We know there are many CPDM members on seat with one SDF member at the Constitutional Council, but that is far beyond the point. Members of the Constitutional Council should be appointed not based on their party affiliations. They should rather be members who have not been members of a political party. It defeats the objective of having a Constitutional Council by appointing members of a political party to come there. I hear some of them resign after they have been appointed. Emmanuel Bondi and all the rest, their names were still on the CPDM website as Central Committee members. They resigned after appointment. But the greatest shock I had was Professor Nkea, who also resigned after appointment. He criticized the system and such attitudes by being a member of the SDF for about 20 years, and then the same thing happened to him and he accepted the appointment. But that is off the mark. That should not be. Members of the Constitutional Council should be appointed by a joint team to ensure that we have members who are credible, independent, and neutral. Just as we're talking about the dialogues we're talking about, there should be groundwork that is consensual. It should be consensual before the appointments into Elekam come. One party should not appoint people into Elekam. What the Prime Minister does in his office as consultations, nobody knows the results because the results are never tabled to anybody. After a few days, the President makes his appointments. I think these are things that only put the country into more risk. And there are some attitudes that only aggravate the situation and make the situation worse. Like coming to say that the President is organizing dialogue, he is talking to people. This is a kind of attitude that puts the people out there really, really angered because nothing is happening. And then to land by saying that the government of Cameroon has refused to commit to the Swiss dialogue because of 5,000 euros. This is funny because, how much does the government spend a day in fighting the war? If the government is spending more than 5,000 euros in fighting the war, what is the peace? Should the peace of southern Cameroonians and the peace of the people, the lives of the people, worth 5,000 euros? Is 5,000 euros worth it? So I think Kedia and the CPDM should really try to revise these utterances and their positions and ensure that there is consensual agreement about dialogue and let peace return.
We have close to 6 minutes to end the program. Mutagha, let's get your take on this final round. As far as this is concerned, many will say that the parliament is of the position to resolve this conflict. But your party did not go in for the legislative and the municipal, and basically maybe they would have add up to the numbers and change the dynamics as far as this conflict is concerned.
Yes, many people will agree with me that the CRM did not go in for the parliamentary and municipal elections in 2020 simply because of the electoral system in place. You remember in 2013, the CRM went for the municipal elections. They won 4 out of the 7 councils in Yaoundé, and all was rigged. In 2018, they went in for elections, and you know what happened? The presidential elections were rigged. So once you've tried once, tries and it's not moving, I think the next thing is for you to find out where the problem comes from. It tried in 2013, it didn't work because of the rigging machinery that has been put in place. 2018 did not work. They will not have to go in for the 2020 twin elections, only just maybe to legitimize the false concept of democracy in Cameroon. So if you talk of the members of parliament having that legal responsibility, which is equally legitimate because they are one of the arms of government in Cameroon, to saying that they resolve the crisis in the northwest and southwest region, I would say yes, it's their responsibility, but do they have the powers to do so? I would say no. Mr. Ngalim just said it quite a while ago. He sounded emphatically, and I want to say it is crystal clear, looking at the parameters through which most of them gain party, that's the win party tickets. You find that there is what they call the party discipline, and the CPDM is deeply rooted in the respect of that party discipline. So once the executive...
And you will say that even the CRM also have investiture nature of selecting candidates, as it was prior to the legislative before they backed out.
I think this will be pure distraction, because at this particular moment we are talking on the National Assembly that is in place. I told that if the CRM had gone in for the 2018 election, we would have been talking on how investiture were done, but they didn't go in because they told you the electoral system in place is not good. I am talking of the CPDM because it has taken us more than 3 decades to study the way they function. You find that once the issues to be discussed at the National Assembly do not tie with the aspirations and the interests of the CPDM executive body, you find that there will be pressure from the executive body that it shouldn't be discussed at the National Assembly, and it will not be discussed. Look, you find that the CPDM came out just twice with maybe some scapegoats of the opposition to attack the United States congressmen, especially when it has to do with issues of the Anglophone crisis. They always come up only to talk when you find that the foreign body has spoken. It has never been discussed at the National Assembly. And then secondly, you find that the COVID-19 gate brought a lot of hidden things that used to happen at the National Assembly. The members of parliament have the first 2 roles to do. What do they have to do? They have to vote laws and then check government actions. But when you talk of a National Assembly where members of parliament are there just to lobby the executive members, the ministers and all the like directors of public companies, and then have contracts, you find that first of all, what do? They compromise their integrity, and it becomes difficult for them to call the executive to order when there is any violation or when there is any crucial issues that need them to do so. And then, when you, excuse me, let me just round up. You find that the constitution of our country goes again to tell us that the president of the republic has the powers to dissolve the National Assembly. That mere fact is something that intimidates the National Assembly. He might dissolve it. What happens if that issue of the Anglophone crisis is discussed at the National Assembly and the President of the Republic finds it a taboo, and then he has the powers to dissolve? You know that if the members of parliament go into the street, maybe to protest, you know what obviously happens? Uniform officers will be sent to impound. Thank you so much.
We will look at the issue of the National Assembly. Kedia, briefly, maybe we'll look at this. What's the way forward as far as this issue is concerned on the legality? You have shared the view with Sama that it is a shared responsibility with the people, the government, and the separatists.
Before I go on that, I just want to make certain points clear. Firstly,
your microphone is a bit tilted.
Firstly, I said those that wanted to go for the dialogue, we know all those groups individually, they were asking for 5,000 euro as bribe. And no government will go into bribing people if they want to dialogue, if actually they are genuine. Secondly,
Mr. Kedia, they bought the
No, let him land. Let him land. No. Let Kedia land. Let Kedia land. Let Kedia land.
As I was saying before I was interrupted, they just said we should be gentlemen. I just saw the quality of the gentlemen I have on the platform now. As I was saying, the responsibility goes back at the level of the government, and the government have done everything in its powers, which we may which some few people will say that they are cosmetic, but I don't know any cosmetic aspect that the separatists have done to bring peace. Lastly, I turn to the people to tell them that they are the sovereign people. I appreciate those people that in their villages they stood up to say enough is enough, to fight Ambazonia fighters and send them out of their village. I appreciate them, and I call upon them to collaborate with the government so that they can bring a lasting peace back in the northwest and southwest region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Mr. Ngalim, before we take leave of you, a last word, briefly. We're out of time.
Yes. Thank you very much for having me on the program, Javis, and I am calling on every concerned person to direct advocacy towards our international partners to see that the international partners can put pressure to bear on Cameroon to resolve this problem. The reason is because when humanitarian issues are concerned, sovereignty is lost and people are dying. More than 5,000 people have died, so we need to come back and resolve this problem with international support. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Barrister Tamfu. Your last word?
Yes, my last word is that may the Lord should visit President Paul Biya, because when he acceded to power, he received Cameroon that was at peace. And I'll pray that he should use his wisdom so that when he's about to leave Cameroon, let him do everything possible that Cameroon should regain the peace that he took when he was acceding to power. So God should visit him and really touch his heart so that his heart should be soft.
Kedia, Malangfe, your last word before we take leave of you?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Greetings to all Cameroonians.
Of course, Sir Mutagha, your last word?
What I want to thank God for is that the CRM had to prove it in 2020 that the elections in Cameroon, especially the municipal and parliamentary elections and even the regional elections, can never satisfy or resolve the crisis in the northwest and southwest region. And presently, I think that Mr. Biya, where he is, he's not having all that physical strength enough. I think at his age, he cannot even resolve the problems of this nation. So Cameroonians, if they are expecting anything from Mr. Biya, I think it's a lie from the pit of hell. We should continue pressurizing this regime in place to to notice the vacancy of the President of the Republic for fresh elections to be organized, so that the next president that will be coming up will resolve the problems of the Anglophone, because the Biya regime has failed. It cannot resolve the problems.
Thank you very much for all those who took out time to send your SMS. Want to say that the messages that were read, sometimes there are so many messages, a lot of you sent your messages and they were not read. Next week Sunday, which is coming up at exactly 12 to 1:30, every Sunday 12 to 1:30. If you want to be a member of our team, you want to participate, you could call the number 676-431-384 to participate. So in the course of the week, we'll give you the topic. This program is on our YouTube channel, and all of our programs are on our YouTube channel, where you can watch after the live session. It is BT Media Group. The YouTube channel is BT Media Group. Facebook, My Media Prime. Twitter, My Media Prime. Instagram, My Media Prime. And if you read this, the rebroadcast will be at exactly 10:30 today on Monday, 9:30 p.m. No matter the matter, what matter is your matter. No matter the matter, what matter is your matter. Bye-bye from Cameroon's economic capital, Fem John Bangen.